Welcome to episode number 8 of the After Hours podcast. Here with me today, I have the Chief Performance Engineer of Statespace and the CEO of Taylor Johnson Performance, Taylor Johnson. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, why don't I guess to elaborate a little bit on Statespace and what you do over there. Let's kind of maybe we could just jump into that real quick, and then we'll get into the fun stuff after.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, brother, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, man. So, so I'm the Chief Performance Engineer for Statespace, and we are a neuroscience and AI gaming company. And one of our products, our training tools, is AimLab, which is a first-person shooter training platform, which is really one of a kind in that it has all of the same testing and assessments you'd find for cognitive performance in a neuroscience lab, but built into the game, as well as an AI component that basically curates your entire training progress to allow you to continue to adapt and get better over time. And then with my consulting, it's with various teams and organizations in the esports space, as well as advising startups, endemic and non-endemic, on how to navigate esports.
And that consulting is your Taylor Johnson Performance.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, just for the context. Cool. Obviously, I know you for a while, so I know you're doing some pretty cool things, and I know a good amount of what all that is, and we'll get into it obviously as the time goes on in this. But what I've been kind of starting off each of these podcasts with is, I try to ask each guest what their first experience with esports is, and kind of what drew you to this space, and how did that kind of happen for you?
Yeah. Do you mind if I go a little out of order? I'll explain my background and then I'll jump
Sure.
into my first experience, because that's how it kind of was aha moment for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So my background's in athletic performance. I coached in college and the NFL for about 10 years. And, throughout that entire process of diving into all aspects of performance, I've always said, performance is my passion, but it's my curiosity that navigates me through the world. And so I was with the San Francisco 49ers for 2 years. And, really was just like, there's got to be something more out there. And I've always been entrepreneurial minded. And for the fortunate circumstances, there was a coaching change. I was like, hey, I don't think we're going to be able to make it through this one. I could stay in the NFL or I could pivot. And I chose to pivot. And one of my good buddies, I was talking shop with a couple of my close friends and colleagues. And one of my buddies was like, hey, you got to check out esports. And I had known of it. I just didn't realize how big it had gotten, and became really curious about the space, and just really came with like a learner's mind and said, okay, what is this like? Setting aside all the assumptions I may have, let me just kind of unpack it and see what's there. And found out very quickly that there are way more similarities than differences. But one of the biggest gaps that I saw was this performance gap, and really creating a bridge between what's been done in traditional sports and now what's happening in esports. And so that was really what led me down this path of diving into the space and meeting some amazing people in the community and amazing people at these teams and organizations, and really starting to build out what this esports performance field looks like. Then my first experience, like firsthand with a team, was with a Dota 2 team overseas. And so I was consulting for a team called Pro Dota. Great group of guys. Actually, one of them, Netta, is he ended up going to the international, and he was part of optics. So it was kind of funny how it all came full circle. He's a great dude,
Right.
and I had met Peter Dagger along the way as well, with Evil Geniuses before then, and it's just kind of funny how it all comes full circle. But anyways, so I went overseas, and I was putting together this boot camp or this training camp for this Dota team, and on the flight over there, I had all these slides, and I was like, hey, here's what all this great stuff that we could talk about and do. But I was like, look, the first couple of days, just learner's mind, ask questions, get to know the guys. And, I don't think I went over any of those slides, honestly, because after the first couple of days of just asking the questions and really finding out where they were at, I said, man, there's just a huge potential here just to start with the basics, like structure, systems, and scheduling. And, I came back from that experience, the 10 days being out there, just really fired up. I was like, there's so much opportunity in the space. The community is amazing. And that's what really, kicked me into gear of starting to get in with these bigger teams.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. That sounds like I didn't know that. So that's definitely, it's cool to hear because it gives me context and comes kind of full circle. So for timing sake, when was that in comparison to like starting IPI and getting involved with all that?
Oh, that was about a year or so before. Yeah. So I was consulting with various teams and organizations. I was in conversations with a couple of big tier one teams. And that's how I met Chris Cheney
Right.
through those connections. And, Chris and I stayed in touch, and he hits me up one day. He goes, "Hey, I got a project. We're about to acquire a team. We want to do performance. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
And so that's what brought me out. And so, IPI kind of came to fruition after being like, we got to call this something,
Right.
because rather than just being the performance department, it really felt like we were doing something really innovative, and it was performance. And my vision was to have to be this institution where you have research and collaboration and really just doing some cool shit. And so that's where, IPI came. It kind of birthed out of that. And yeah, it turned into one of my passion projects while I was at Infinite. And I was fortunate enough to bring Trevor Love on, who was my right hand guy, and build something really special, which I hope had an impact on the players that we worked with.
I think, I mean, in seeing what we saw or what I saw with what you guys did with them, it had to have affected them positively in some way. And I think what you guys are doing and what you are doing is definitely great because it gives not only fitness advice and getting in routine and stuff like that, but it just gets them in a regular routine like with their own lives and things like that. So I think if nothing else, definitely helps them in that aspect, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had a blast working with, everybody else on the staff too. It's like,
Yeah.
I always take pride in just kind of, just trying to help people, man. Like, and it was one of those things where Trevor and I sat down one day. I'll never forget it. We're like, we're spending a lot of time with the players, but we got to spend a lot of time with the staff too. Because if,
Right.
rising tide will raise all ships, and we put it on our backs to be like, hey, let's try to level everybody up as best we can, and let's do. That's why we started the whole, the whole health initiative and bringing in yoga and having the catered lunches and trying to get the staff on the same sort of vibe as the players were getting on, so that everybody can perform.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was definitely loved by all of us. I know us the merch guys we loved it a lot. So that was definitely good stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of segueing into like fitness and esports as a whole, I think depending on who you, obviously, if you don't ask the right people, they're going to kind of say that being fit and being in good shape doesn't really matter in esports, but it's, like anything else, is going to be good for anything you do, whether you're an artist or you're playing football or you're shooting people in Call of Duty, like whatever it ends up being, like being healthy is always going to help. But what's your kind of mindset and like how do you think that obviously that ties into gameplay and being a professional gamer?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll start by saying the physicality. I think where people get caught up on that is they're still thinking back to traditional sports where it's an athletic endeavor and where it's a lot of physical movement and impact. Now, gaming is still an athletic endeavor, but it's incredibly more cognitive in that there's not a lot of physical movement. So if you look at the spectrum between, the proportion of physical output and cognitive output, and sports are basically on this continuum, various sports. Esports is way more skewed towards the cognitive side, but that's not to discount the physicality, meaning sitting for long periods of time in specific postures, which takes a lot of endurance. I mean, I think I would challenge a lot of people who balk at esport athletes not being athletes to sit down and play a highly competitive strategic game for hours on end and compete at the very highest level. It is incredibly challenging. And so that's where I think when we talk about the level of fitness, like what is this gamer fitness? And really, in my mind, from the physical side, it comes down to three things. It's durability, resiliency, and some sort of cardiovascular stress or capacity to the system to improve blood flow and cognitive function. So all of the physical stuff that we did and that we do now is really geared towards performance, cognitive performance, and longevity to improve and really shift this career span curve to the right. So corrective exercise, balancing out asymmetries, some cardiovascular fitness. I mean, because there's tons of research that shows, as little as 10 to 20 minutes of exercise per day, cardiovascular has tremendous benefits for cognitive output and function. So really, right. It's kind of dialing back this knob of people thinking they got to go do CrossFit. There's a lot of trainers out there that are just kind of missing the mark on this. You've really got to think about what are the players doing on a day-to-day basis, what is necessary, what is the overarching objectives, and then you come up with the strategies and tactics to fill those needs.
Yeah, for sure. So as I get for someone who's either an aspiring amateur / professional gamer or a professional gamer now, what do you think the most, or what would you tell them that the most important kind of, activity would be, whether it's, running a mile each morning or doing a particular exercise or lifting some like X amount of weight on whatever muscle group or whatever. What would you kind of give them for that advice?
Yeah. Honestly, probably none of those.
Yeah.
In like specifics of like running a mile or whatnot. I think so. I have this isn't my own acronym, but it's BAMS, BAMS, bare ass minimum. Mm-hmm. It's really finding what is the bare ass minimum, or essentially the minimum effective dosage you can do every day where you can start to build consistency in your habits. For a lot of people, going out and running a mile can be really challenging. So what's a derivative or something, a smaller win from that is like, hey, can you just walk for 10 minutes? So I think coming up with some sort of movement practice, whether that's a daily mobility, which, could take a couple minutes, or, walking around the block a couple times, or even if it's just taking the stairs versus the elevator, those are like the smaller kind of steps that I always put in place first. To start building towards running the mile, lifting weight, and stuff of that nature. Because again, it's like you have to meet them where they're at. And for a lot of individuals, this isn't just with gaming, this is just like in life in general, corporate America, especially with these desk jobs. These are big shifts in their habits and big shifts in their lifestyle. And so really, it's like you got to set them up for success. And in that, you have to create this roadmap. So a lot of the conversations we have with players and really with the teams and like their the C-level executives and the GMs and try to get the entirety of the organization to understand, like, okay, you have to have a step-by-step process. What that means is you build this roadmap. And with that roadmap, you have to understand that habits compounded over time turn into a lifestyle change. And what we're going for is a performance lifestyle. So kind of back to your original question, find what your BAM is for some sort of movement, 10 minutes a day. Really work at your sleep and eat just a little bit better. And the habits for eating can be really quite simple. It's, stop at 80% full. It's eating slowly, because people in the US, we eat so fast.
Yeah.
So like stop at 80% full, because you'd be surprised. Like you actually don't need that extra few bites, so portion control, slowing down when you eat. And then really it's adding in some lean protein, some vegetables, some really dark leafy green vegetables and fruits, and being smart about your carbohydrates and your fat intake and knowing how to kind of work that in. And that can be really daunting to some, quite honestly. The nutrition seems to be a really big roadblock for a lot of people. So what I start with first and foremost is like, hey, let's go to work on your sleep. Let's try to get that dialed in. And then let's get your movement practice. And then we'll start to slowly dial in your nutrition.
Yeah. So to go back to the sleep thing, what's what's your, you said get better at your sleep. What is there a perfect like time that you should be sleeping, or is it, does it vary person to person, or how do you kind of gauge that?
Yeah. So it really depends on the individual, and honestly, it depends on their schedule too. Like, sometimes they don't have a choice in, like, their schedules are so crazy because of the team and the organization that they're with. So really that conversation again happens with the organization and be like, hey, let's start being mindful of when they're starting their day, when they're ending their day, so they can actually set them up for a better night's sleep. And if they have obligations to stream, let's factor that into their day, because if they have, sponsors and they have to hit a certain amount of hours for streaming and whatnot for promotion, like you have to be mindful of that as well. So I think really with the sleep, it's identifying if you're a lark or a morning person or a night owl. Okay. And then that'll kind of shift like when you go to bed and when you wake up. And some of the, like, a lot of people talk about this, but it's so true. It's like just shutting off electronics an hour before bed has huge benefits, just cutting out the blue light, helping your body wind down, giving yourself an opportunity to kind of do a brain dump. So I offer up a suggestion for a lot of people just to take a notepad and just journal and just, I mean, Zach, how many times have you tried to go to bed and your mind just like races?
All the time.
Yeah, man, especially because you're an entrepreneur, you got a lot of stuff going on, like myself as well. And a lot of people experience that. And so really it's, a really cool way to get around that is, man, just like brain dump it. Just like go to put the pen to paper and just journal, and it's not like Dear Journal, you just kind of just flow. Whatever comes to mind, you just like bang it out, write it. That helps quite a bit. You'd be surprised. So that really helps. But for some people, saying turn off your electronics an hour before bed is like blasphemy.
Right.
Like there's no way. So, like give me 15. Can you do 10? Can you do 5? Really it's a conversation, right? So I guess the goal would be an hour, but really it's like figure again, what's your BAM? Like kind of set in these boundaries for yourself and then keep your word to them.
Yeah. No, I definitely am not the person that puts my phone down an hour before bed 9 times out of 10. Maybe not 9 times, but like at least half the time I'm falling asleep with my phone in my hand doing something. Not even exaggerating. But and I know that's definitely an unhealthy kind of habit. And I promise you, I'm going to try that journal, brain dump type idea. Because I definitely think that could be useful to me, and it could be useful to anybody who's not doing that currently. Because I don't know how many times I think of a good idea at night and then I forget it.
Oh, dude, yeah, and that's the worst, man. Because then you get anxiety. You lay there and you're like, I won't write it down, but then you just lay there. But okay, what do I have to do to remember this? That's the worst.
Yeah.
I feel that, and and the thing too, it's like, again, it's about getting the foundation in place. And then once you do that, then you can start getting all crazy and do all the crazy shit about really dialing in your sleep. But really, it's like start with the basics and kind of build this foundation. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of doing all the wearables and all this other stuff, but really start with the basics first.
When you say wearables, you mean like things you would wear to bed that help you sleep better?
No, but track your sleep.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, even maybe that's not like a too far-fetched idea, but really it's like, the Oura ring.
Okay.
OURA ring is a phenomenal piece of technology. It's got great validity. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, so I'm not making money off like pushing them. I just think it's a great product. And that'll actually capture, it'll start looking at your HRV. It'll look at your body temperature overnight. It'll kind of track how much you're moving during your sleep. And it's just on your finger. It's a ring that you wear. Really good success, really good consistency rates too. Like people find they have way more compliance with the ring than they do with like a watch or something where you have to upload all the time.
Right.
So that's really cool. And I personally use it because I'm a little bit of like a nerd when it comes to that stuff. I'm like, okay, I had a beer last night. How's that going to affect my sleep? And like, sure shit. I'm like, oh wow, I actually toss and turn more than I thought I would. Or if I try to, you kind of gamify, like, okay, let me try to get like a couple of like, sleep scores of like in the 80s back to back. And then I'm like, oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah, I've not heard of that, but I'm going to check it out. Cause the thing is I've tried never like an Apple Watch, but the Fitbits, I know that they monitor that. I don't know how good that is in comparison, but I've tried those, and I don't like sleeping with anything on my wrist because it kind of just gives me that like uncomfortability.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. So diving further into fitness and all that, and in the esports space, obviously right now it's kind of, I guess, all over the place. There's really not, with the exception of what you do, I don't think there's too much of like a streamlined version of how fitness should be with these teams right now. Where do you see it in the next year and 5 year, or 5 years is kind of far, but like the next year, or where would you like to see it in the next year? I guess the better question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I really want more awareness around what the potential could be. And for me, I'm standing in and for creating the possibility of promoting health and wellness through gaming. So this isn't just like a performance thing for all gamers and professional esport players or aspiring esports players. This is like a worldwide thing,
Right.
but it's using gaming as a medium to catch the curiosity of what could be. Because, that's what gaming does. It transcends. It doesn't matter what body style, sex you are, age, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like the Nike thing. If you have a body, you're an athlete.
Right.
So really what I want is just more awareness around, these are high performers. They need to take care of their bodies and their mind. And, one of the big things that I stand for too is, not having the mismanagement of players like you'd see in traditional sports, and not overlooking the fact that the burnout is probably, and I can't state this, with the absolute, but probably due to a lack of coping mechanisms and the crazy schedules and poor lifestyle choices and habits. And they only know what they know. It's
Right.
like if you look at this pie chart and you have this slice of it that is like, hey, here's the information it's a small slice. There's another small slice. Next to that, this is what you don't know. Like, do you speak Spanish? Yes or no? Like, that information. Well, the rest of that entire pie chart is everything you don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so a big thing for me this next year, what I've been trying to do this year is really just educate, is get people tuned into the possibility of like, hey, there is something here. Do we have like the golden, truth on how to train an esport athlete? No, but I'm sure as hell working on it.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm going after. That's been a huge joy for me, of making all these connections and having amazing people in my circle of bouncing these ideas off of them, but really using that to promote the health and wellness to a broader audience.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Do you see, and maybe not end goal, but like in the future for performance and fitness and health in the esports community, do you see that being each AAA bigger organization will have their own department, similar to the way they have it in the NFL, like each team has their own department? Or do you think it'll be more along the lines of, kind of what you're doing now, where there's an agency that kind of works with each team? How do you kind of see that? Or how do you think that'll be best delivered to the teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally think that every major organization will eventually have an esports performance coach, an entire department that basically orchestrates and helps with the load management. And here's the thing too, so I'll just kind of pause at that. So yes, I think every organization will have esports performance department. However, there needs to be a very clear understanding that the knowledge of the performance coach and the actual game coach themselves, it needs to be synergistic.
Right.
There cannot be a divide and like, hey, I'm going to stay in my silo, you stay in your silo. We're not going to talk unless it's like, at lunch. There needs to be a collaborative effort really from the top down and left to right. It's this horizontal integration across the board. And that's why I've spent a lot of time, and I need to spend more time learning more about the games and understanding the strategy and the tactics. And I don't ever want to be, an actual esport coach, but I want to be able to speak the language, and I want to be able to have the conversations with the coaches, because they're going through the same shit as the players.
Right.
And if you want to help the players, you got to help the coaches. So it's understanding the vernacular and understanding really what's going on to build out these programs. And so where I see things going is building out this model of training and education that transcends the esport coaches, the performance coaches, the management, the players. Like, everybody's just like all leveled up. And that's really what I'm going after. And to empower, this current ecosystem of performance coaches that are in the gaming space, because there's a few of us, but really empowering the next generation of esports performance coaches. And that's what I get super fired up about, because I get hit up a lot by either existing coaches in esports or coaches from traditional sports or kids that are coming out of college. They're like, hey, I don't want to be a performance coach in traditional sports. I want to go in esports. How do I do it? So it's interesting because, I'm helping the teams and organizations, but really what I'm doing is now trying to develop pipelines for these up and coming performance coaches to get into esports and give them the tools to be successful in doing so.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like aside from the fact that it sounds like a lot of work, it definitely sounds like a lot of fun. And
Oh, dude, it's
makes,
awesome, man.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Oh, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
it's like, knowledge is power, but only if you share it, man.
Oh,
It's like, okay,
100%.
it's like, and the thing too is like, there's only one of me. And so it's like, why not level everybody up and like put some badass coaches out there that can help people achieve their best results? Like, dude, that'd be selfish if I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I mean, you see similar situations to that all the time. Like there's only one of each of us, and that one of each of us is not going to be able to do every single thing in their niche. So definitely, share that love or the
Mm-hmm.
load in general.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Well, it is love too, man. It's like,
yeah,
it's the love and the passion, bro. It's
yeah,
like really, for me, it's about the mentorship. I mean, my thing, I always talk about like create, lead, and serve. I mean,
right,
that is my purpose, and that's the vision with many missions. We don't have this one mission in life that tends to change over time as we get really drawn. Our gravity kind of pulls us towards these different areas, and that's fun, man. It's. I don't mean to get all philosophical, but that's part of life, man. That's like really what I've kind of stepped into as well. Is like the kind of like this whole surrender to what the universe provides for you, and just going after it and having true confidence in yourself and the ability to go achieve that. And that's what I really want to convey to the players that I work with and the teams as well. It's like, there's infinite possibilities that you can create, and you have the power to do so. And here are some tools to go do it.
yeah, for sure, 100%. Um, so I guess that's kind of a good segue into, um, what else do you work on? I know you do a lot. So
Yeah.
aside from your your personal, the Taylor Johnson performance, and your oh man, I'm that guy.
Statespace.
Statespace, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no worries.
Aside from those two things, what else do you do? I know you, like I said, I know you do a lot.
Yeah, man. Outside of work, I love training.
Yep.
I'm a big climber. Like I love doing big hikes and climbs. I haven't done any this year. I probably won't, just because I had a little bit of a knee injury. I tried to get back into martial arts. I don't know if you know this, but my background was in martial arts for a
Yeah.
long time as well. Yeah. So, I mean, for those who don't know, it's like I trained professionally and I fought professional Muay Thai kickboxing. I lived in Thailand, and that was like a whole lifetime ago. And part of me still really misses that.
Right.
And so I tried to get back, and I got into jujitsu really heavily as well. So I tried to get back into jujitsu again and like tweak my knee. So no climbing for me this year. Um, but yeah, man, it's training. I just love connecting with people. So like a lot of phone calls and like doing cool stuff like this, with cool people like yourself. My partner, Leanne, she's awesome. We do a lot of traveling together. I'm a part of a men's group, and with that, we do a lot of retreats all over the world, which is super fun. Yeah, so it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of cooking. I mean, I love to cook. So like one of my hobbies is just like making bomb food. Like I just
Right.
love that.
Yeah.
And then making food for people, and then live music. So I'm going to Burning Man this year, which I'm super fired up on, which is not so much for the music as it is just the community and the art and just the experience. But I try to go to a lot of live shows as much as I can.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so how do you find that happy medium? Because everybody I talk to, I kind of, most of the people I talk to have that. I do a whole bunch of crap stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what is your secret to balancing your work, the two companies that you're kind of doing right now, and then on top of that, you do your training and your climbing and your traveling. Like, what's the best way for somebody who's having trouble balancing all that, in your eyes?
Yeah, great question. I think it comes down to three things. Two really, but it's sense of purpose and social support. So the sense of purpose is really being clear on what it is you're going after and kind of having that be your North Star. So a good buddy of mine who organizes these retreats, he talks about this concept of pace. He's like, what's your pace in life? And it doesn't mean necessarily the speed, although it can drop into that kind of conversation. But what he means is, what's your purpose for P, your authenticity for A, your creation, or what is it you create for C, and then how do you execute is your E. Okay, so purpose, authenticity, creation, and execution. And when you become clear on that, the balance stuff really sorts itself out, because you start creating distinctions around what's a hell yes, then everything else becomes a no.
Right.
And that's a hard lesson, man. Like, I'm still learning that. And that's where it kind of comes into the social support, is having your tribe around you that really helps kind of prop you up and keep you honest. I mean, my partner, Leanne, she holds me to my shit, dude. She's a very strong, powerful woman. And she will, she's like, hey, you're getting two in your head, and you're like getting way down this path of, there's no balance. And she'll call me on it, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So having that social support is really key. It's like this African proverb. It's like, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And then I add, if you want to go the farthest, you pick the right tribe. So being selective and being mindful of the people you surround yourself with, because you want to have, that whole interplay of, going far together. So those are the two things. And it's a lot of lessons learned too, man. Like, I by no means perfect, but really having like that sense of purpose is really key, which feels good once you get it. And sometimes, well, most of the time it's always evolving.
Yeah, for sure. I've not heard that. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. It's obviously this is all audio, but this is one of those goosebumps types things that I got, because that hits home for me, because I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's very relatable, and obviously
totally,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
And then pick the right tribe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
it's like,
sure.
you want to. It's, and you get this, right? It's like, you pick the right group of people and you just vibe. Like, talk about getting goosebumps, man. It's like when you're in that room and you got those people around you and you got an idea and it's just freaking, you're going. And that's how it was with Trev and I, man. When we were building IPI, it's like, dude, every day we were just like, let's go.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, that was, it's it was fun to watch, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And I still hit him up, man. He says hi, by the way. I told him I was coming on a podcast with you. Huh. Yeah. I still hit him up and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Like I'm coming. Just give me some time. I'll build it out. I'm coming for you.
Nice. Yeah. I miss him. I have to give him a call or something.
Super good dude.
Dude. Let me get your input on reading. If I remember correctly, you're a pretty avid reader, right? Or am I way off?
Totally. No, I would read most of the day if I could.
Okay. So how does that affect? Obviously, that affects your brain exercise, I guess. But in the long term, what do you think how important do you think that is to your everyday, or as an entrepreneur, or as a performing esports player? How do you think that affects that overall?
Oh, it's incredibly important. I actually made a post on Twitter about this. Stephen Kotler, who wrote Stealing Fire and a book on Superman. Basically, it was about how do you kind of level up your consciousness and your performance. He made a post about feeding your brain, not necessarily with food, but with books. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge proponent of reading in multiple disciplines, because what happens is you get this lateral transfer. And so it's almost like, you start to be able to connect the dots between all these multiple concepts. And then, who knows, man, you might actually connect the dot and be like, oh shit, there's actually something there. So I learned that really early on in my career in coaching. I had a mentor of mine who was like, you got to read, and don't just read stuff about performance, read about business and finance and sociology and law and everything you can think of, because there's a common thread that connects it all. And once you start gaining more of this information, you become an expert generalist, which back in the day, people used to balk at. They're like, oh, no, you need to specialize. Well, that's great. However, if you go so far down the rabbit hole and you don't come up for air, you're not able to make the connections between all these other fields.
Right.
And so for me, I love being an expert generalist because I can have conversations on multiple different fronts and meet multiple people and start to connect the dots between all those things. So to your question, now it's really important. I always make time every day to read even a little bit. Like my bare ass minimum is 15 minutes, but in an ideal world, I'd have 3 hours spread throughout the day, morning, midday, and at night, where I have an hour chunk to really dive into different topics. And I could talk a little bit more about that too, but it's that's kind of how I structure my day.
Yeah. Do you think so? Are you very much you'd prefer to read like a physical paper book, or is it, you'll consume some, what's like word content like on your phone, like whether it's an article or multiple articles or any type of book, like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it kind of depends on preference. So for me, like I'm a very tactile person. I love having a book in my hands. And actually, I mean, one of my visions for success is to one day just have a badass library of like, floor to ceiling books with a huge, sliding glass door window to a balcony that overlooks like a forest and a river or some shit, It's
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
so
I
to me,
respect it.
to me, that's very clear in my mind. Like, that's what I want, man. Like, and then I have a family member who's in politics and travel the world, and his office or his study is just that. I mean, it's this beautiful library of just books floor to ceiling and artifacts from all over the world that always just stuck with me. But I'll read journals, like scientific journals. I'll read stuff on my phone. I try not to get sucked into the hole of like social media and
Right.
Instagram and Twitter, because that's like, man, that is dangerous. Like you just
Yeah.
it's like infinite. It's like an infinite hole that you can always continue scrolling on.
Oh, it's
So
terrible.
it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. Unfortunately, like obviously, the beautiful thing and the negative thing about the esports community is that everything is connected through mostly Twitter, but the internet as a whole.
Yep.
So it's great that you could reach out and you could, if on a good day, talk to basically whoever you want. But at the same time, you feel like if you get too far into it, like you said before, you don't really come up for air.
Yep.
So that's not fun. But I've here probably within the last year, I've done a good job of being able to disconnect from that personally, because it's always definitely good to turn off and reset, like you were saying. Um, so I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dark hole.
And one more thing on books too, man. It's, it doesn't have to be a, tactile like book. It could be an article or whatever. I had this concept explained to me, early on in my career, which got me really interested in books. I've always been one to seek mentors. And somebody once told me, they're like, your books are like mentors at your fingertips. And how you choose to read the book is really up to you. And we're taught in school, you got to read the book, front to back. That's how it is. Like, I don't do that. And really what I try to do is like, have a relationship with the book. It's like, I read the table of contents. I know what's in it. I'll go to the part that speaks to me in that moment or that I'm most interested in, and then I'll put it back on the shelf and I'll come back to it because I know what's in it. I'll come back to it when the other parts are relevant. Or if I choose to just read through it, I'll do that. And what's interesting with that is you kind of start to, again, expand your knowledge threshold. And the more you can do that, your perception of reality changes. And the more you can, kind of not hold yourself to this previous thought notion of having to read a book front to back, you kind of free yourself up to be able to dabble and explore way more different types of fields of study, which makes it way more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, does this apply to all books or books that are just kind of more you would read for the knowledge of it, or would you read a like a like a leisure book that way too?
Got it. Yeah, yeah. So good question. So no, the answer is no. So the way I kind of do that is I have these three different categories of how I organize my reading. So and this kind of goes in like the way of my day too. So in the morning, I'll read more books on kind of like the sciences or like the core fundamentals of business or um, psychology or neuroscience or physiology, stuff like that, because that tends to like prime me for my creative space when I'm thinking about how to really dive into the esports stuff.
Sure.
Then the middle part of the day is more like personal development, more business management, kind of leadership type stuff. or articles, journals, and stuff that kind of come across my table from our science and data scientists from Statespace, and just kind of thinking about the projects that we're working on with that. And at night, it's always biographies on successful people. And those so the first two I'll kind of pick apart and read, different sections and not read the whole way through. But at night, if I choose a biography, I will always read it all the way through. But sometimes I'll have like 2 or 3 different biographies going on at once.
Okay.
Where it's kind of like, a conversation, like you call your friend, like you just pick up the conversation like it never left.
Sure,
Same sort of thing. Like I treat my biography books like that. Which is cool because you start to see threads amongst like these people who are just leaving clues to success in these books. Like they wrote it for a reason,
Yeah, for sure. If you were to kind of put you on the spot here, this is probably a hard question.
Okay.
If you were to recommend a single book for an entrepreneur who is just trying to do something successful, do you have like a go-to for that?
I think I do. So one of the more influential books that has impacted me is Finding Mastery by Robert Greene.
I am now writing this down because I read that book. That was half selfish, half for the podcast.
Yeah, totally. Dude. Yeah. So he, what he did is he went and looked in history in the last couple hundred years of people who were really successful, and kind of broke down, I mean, even farther than 100 years, because he was looking at Leonardo da Vinci, and basically just looked at, okay, what kind of habits did they have, and how did they, what was their trajectory in their career? And what you'll find is a lot of them kind of go through this apprentice stage, and then like this tinkering stage, and it's kind of like these evolutions, these steps that you follow. And he kind of takes you to this, this amazing kind of roadmap. For an entrepreneur, I think it's really good to find mentors along the way. And I feel like this gives you a pretty good roadmap. It's just saying, okay, well, what should I be thinking about, and how do I interpret the things that happen to me? Because the distinction you need to make, and this isn't necessarily in the book, but this is just one that I've come to, is, things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Right.
And it's a mindset, and it's the context you stand in to be like, okay, whatever comes my way, it's nothing that's happening to me as a personal thing. It's happening for me, which I need to make the choice rather, on how I want to respond. So yeah, I mean, Robert Greene, Finding Mastery, I've read all of his books. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, I will at the very least check that one out. Because over the past, again, probably the past year, I've not been very good with it, but I've been trying to read more. I probably have read more in the past year than I have since I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Because I probably haven't read. I probably maybe read one book since I graduated high school before this past year. And it's definitely been, it's definitely helped me build my own routine aside from getting up, getting ready, coming to the office, or whatever it ends up being that day. But it's definitely, having reading in a routine is definitely good. I see.
Yeah, and dude, an easy way to do it, like if you don't have to go out and get a book, like get a Blinkist subscription, and it basically takes like a book and breaks it into 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah?
It'll give you all the gold nuggets of a book in like 10 minutes or less, like 15 minutes. I'm just on their website now. It says insights in 15 minutes. So basically it takes all the key ideas and concepts, and you can either read it or it's audio. And like, that's fun. Like you could just basically take an hour and bang out, 4 books in an hour, and you're like, oh shit, I just got a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good. I mean, because I stopped listening to music in the car. For the most part, I try to, but most of the time I listen to podcasts now. But even something like that for 15 minutes, my ride to work is 15 minutes, so I could just burn through all the important part of a book in 15 minutes. This is not sponsored by Blinkist, but
it's not. Yeah. Sorry, real quick, you made a point about for the esport athletes as well. I mean, this isn't just for like an individual, but for the gamers too. Yeah. Thinking outside of their game itself, the lateral transfer of concepts and strategy can come into play. So I encourage that as well. It's like, yes, you want to drill down and know all the technical, tactical aspects of the game, but also be able to draw inspiration and innovation from other areas and other games and other strategies.
So are you saying like a League of Legends professional shouldn't feel bad because they want to either wind down or kind of get a different mindset by playing a game like Call of Duty?
100%. Like, yeah, please do that. Get yourself away from the game itself. It'll give you an opportunity to recharge. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that works obviously there, but I think it works in almost any aspect because I mean, what for me, since I started this podcast, I also started doing some photography and graphic design, like on
Dope.
like personally, kind of on the side. And as I kind of not necessarily got burnt out, but kind of got things started to get stale with what I'm doing with Sector 6 for me, as far as that drive goes, and refreshing it doing this podcast because now I do them once a week,
Mm-hmm.
and they're great because it's out that for me it's a refresher once a week. It's something I just get to talk to really cool people, and then on top of that, I do when I want to be more creative, I do something either digitally or I go out and do photography, and it's just for me, it's just a really good reset. And I'm sure that, there's definitely people out there that those three things might not be their thing, but there's definitely two or three different things that people could just kind of add to their plate, more for fun, less for, building up their, filling up their plate because so they can't handle it. It's, just good stuff to do, I would
Totally.
say.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Cool. I guess kind of probably starting to wind down a little bit here. Where do you, where do you see your career in or out, I guess, of esports, preferably in the next year to 2 to 3 years, like, or better yet, what's your end goal for you personally in esports?
Mm. Yeah, I've actually started to put more thought to this. This kind of goes back to what I mean by that is like, what I want the career span to be in esports, and knowing myself. Um, I have big shifts or pivots in my life every 10 years. Um, one of the bigger ones came when I made it to the NFL, and then within a couple of years left. And so this next 10-year block, it's within esports. What I really want to do is really help impact. And something I always go by is like how I choose what's a hell yes and everything else is a no is good people, good business, epic shit, and it has to have an
Yeah.
impact. And so for me, what I really want to do is get the awareness out and have people really tune into the possibility of promoting health and wellness through gaming and player development, both personal, professional, and education and mentorship as a bridge for pro players to be successful for life after gaming. That's incredibly important. And I will always bring that into conversations when I talk with people, and really kind of pave the way of this new field and pioneer esports performance and what does that look like, and thinking outside the box, and then bringing people along to help facilitate that and spread that, and then really kind of pass the torch on to somebody else who, I'm not the smartest person out there, so I know there's going to be some smart dudes, smart guys and girls coming along that are like, hey, I got this idea, but yeah, let's go empower you to go do that, and
Yeah.
hopefully that'll continue to pay it forward and create some lasting change. And all the while just having fun while I do it. Like I think that's the biggest thing for me is having fun and loving what I do. And I feel really good about everything I'm doing right now. I got some other stuff some announcements and some other projects I'm working on that are just real good, feel good stuff. And it's all good stuff, man.
Yeah. I mean, sounds like a good roadmap to me.
Yeah.
I'm excited for what you're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing, the it feels like a plethora of things that you're, ultimately going to be announcing and continuing to work on, things like that. So I'm excited.
Thanks, brother.
So
Appreciate that.
no problem. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess outside of that, or let me back up. Was there anything that you kind of wanted to say or talk about that we didn't?
No, I think we did a good job, man. Yeah,
Cool.
there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I would say, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to hit me up. I always, I've been very fortunate to have some amazing mentors, and people hit me up quite a bit on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I always do my best to respond in a timely fashion and answer questions. And because again, it's about passing on that knowledge and really developing a stronger community behind what's happening in gaming and esports, which what I hope is like create a new model of like this standard of what could be, so that whatever else comes after it, it's like we've already got this amazing foundation in place. It's like it's just the status quo, and we'll continue to get better. So knowledge is power, but you just got to share it, right?
Yeah, 100%. And if I wanted to reach out to you on Twitter or Instagram or whatever you want to talk to somebody on, how are they going to do that best?
Yeah, so Twitter and Instagram is Coach T_Johnson.
And LinkedIn is just Taylor Johnson, I believe, right?
I think it's like Taylor Johnson Performance.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have some stuff linked if you're listening on YouTube, or I'll have all that linked if you're listening on YouTube. But everywhere else, search it or go to Coach T_Johnson on Twitter and hit this man up. Definitely a knowledgeable man, and I would definitely take advantage of this. But yeah, other than that, make sure to leave a like, follow, subscribe, or whatever it is on the platform that you're listening to, and make sure to reach out to Taylor. Tell him you were coming from the podcast, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for coming on, Taylor.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.